Spanish investigators reveal new details of the plot behind the terror attacks last Thursday that killed 15 people, as a picture begins to emerge of how the terror cell stayed under the radar. Venezuela's former prosecutor says she can prove President Maduro was part of a bribery scheme. Luisa Ortega fears for her life after fleeing Venezuela, where she faces charges. And French President Emmanuel Macron tries to rustle up support to change EU rules on the posted workers who don't have to pay local charges, as he visits the Austrian Chancellor. Hello and welcome to France 24. I'm Catherine Clifford. We begin in Barcelona, where police investigators have revealed new details about last Thursday's terror attacks. They're beginning to piece together a clearer picture of the events that led to the deaths of 15 people. François Wibeau has the story.
Spanish investigators have uncovered a chilling plot. One of the 4 terrorists held in custody has admitted they had originally planned to bomb one or several churches in Barcelona. The cell was very well organized. They had 2 hideouts, each with a distinct purpose. The first, in Rio de Cañas, was for logistics. Inside, investigators found ID papers belonging to the terrorists and a receipt for 500 liters of acetone. The second, in Alcanar, was for assembling bombs and contained 120 gas bottles, large quantities of nails, a suicide vest, and a handwritten letter pledging allegiance to the Islamic State group. On the 16th of August, their attack was imminent. One of the members of the cell rented a van near Barcelona. But later that day, there was an explosion at the Alcanar safe house, killing 2 of the terrorists, including Abdelbaki El-Sati, the imam and brains behind the operation. Left with no explosives and no leader, they decided to improvise. Younes Abu Yaqub drove the van to Barcelona to mow down crowds on Las Ramblas. A few hours later, 5 terrorists bought knives and axes in Cambrils before driving into pedestrians around 1 a.m. All of the members of the cell still alive have been indicted. Only one has been let go and placed under judicial surveillance, the owner of the Audi used in Cambrils, as there seems to be no evidence he had any prior knowledge of the attacks.
And a tip-off from Spanish police has led Dutch authorities to cancel a rock concert this Wednesday. Police found a car containing gas canisters close to the venue in Rotterdam, where US band Alalas had been due to play. A counter-terrorism official said the van wasn't connected to the recent vehicle attacks in Spain. The city's mayor said the driver had been detained and was being questioned. Let's take a listen.
The ring model that the police established around the Mesilo to monitor the area resulted in a Spanish car being stopped, a car with a Spanish license plate, a van to be precise, containing gas tanks. A link between the van with the gas tanks and the threat cannot yet be established. The bomb disposal unit is working on the van to work out exactly what is going on.
Venezuela's recently dismissed chief prosecutor says she has evidence President Nicolas Maduro was involved in a bribery arrangement with Brazilian construction company Odebrecht. Luisa Ortega fled the country last week. She faces charges of misconduct. Ortega says she's being persecuted for her efforts to expose corruption and fears for her life. Diptyka Laurent tells us more.
She went from close insider to vocal critic of Nicolas Maduro. Now Venezuela's fugitive former chief prosecutor, Luisa Ortega Diaz, has taken her corruption allegations against President Maduro to the public. At a regional conference in Brazil, she has claimed that the Venezuelan government has enriched itself through a massive corruption scheme involving briberies from a Brazilian company.
They have attempted to hide many instances of corruption for which I have a lot of proof. More concretely, the case of Odebrecht, that compromises many high Venezuelan officials, starting with the President of the Republic.
The former prosecutor says her sacking was politically motivated to prevent her office from pursuing corruption cases involving top officials. Along with her husband, she fled to Colombia last week amid fears for their lives. Maduro has urged his regional neighbors to cooperate with his government in handing over the exiled couple.
We have handed over 120 criminals to Colombia in recent years. I hope that these criminals, Diaz and her husband, will be delivered to Venezuela so that justice can be done on our territory.
Maduro's government accuses Ortega and her husband of colluding with its sworn enemy, the United States. The Venezuelan leader even appealed to the Pope to help the country diffuse tensions after Donald Trump said he wouldn't rule out a military intervention.
US President Donald Trump changed his tone this Wednesday as he addressed veterans in Reno, Nevada, with a message of new unity and healing the wounds that divide us. This after striking a rather more provocative tone on Tuesday evening as he gave a huge campaign-style rally in Phoenix, attacking the media, fellow Republicans and Democrats. Simon Harding reports.
Beefing up his stance on immigration. At a rally in Phoenix, Arizona, the birthplace of his presidential campaign, President Trump reaffirmed his will to control illegal immigration and improve the quality of life of the legal immigrant community.
Years of uncontrolled immigration have placed enormous pressure on the jobs and wages of working families, and they've put great burdens on local schools and hospitals. While this may be good for a handful of special interests, it's unfair to working people of all backgrounds all throughout our country.
After facing heavy criticism in recent weeks, the president returned to one of his key campaign pledges and a popular pledge within the Republican community. Fresh off a speech on Afghanistan, he visited a Marine Corps base along the US-Mexico border. Trump said that building a wall along the US's southern border would go ahead no matter what.
Build that wall. Now, the obstructionist Democrats would like us not to do it, but believe me, if we have to close down our government, we're building that wall.
Despite the president's claims, administration officials who refused to be identified said the US-Mexico border had a 46% drop in arrests of people attempting to enter illegally compared to the same period last year.
Iraqi troops have now recaptured 2 neighborhoods of Tal Afar, according to a military commander. This on day 4 of an operation to take the northern city back from the Islamic State group. It's one of the last pockets of IS territory remaining in the country. The commander said militants had been driven out of Al-Kifa al-Janubi on the southwestern edge of the town and Al-Kifa al-Shamali on the northwestern edge. François Wibo has this report.
Just beyond this wall, fighters from the Islamic State group. Iraqi militias used tanks and heavy artillery to reach the ISIS stronghold of Tal Afar. But with 30,000 civilians still trapped inside, from now on, it's mostly rifles and rocket launchers with a little help from the air.
We've been able to monitor enemy movements, and we provide our units with the necessary intelligence to deal with them. This has made it easier to break into the village of Al-Ashaq. Now they've entered the village and crossed it, and they're searching and clearing the houses.
The estimated 1,000 jihadis holed up inside the town have built sandbanks to stall the Iraqi army's progress and charge with explosive-laden vehicles. Tal Afar sits on a major supply route, linking Iraq's second city, Mosul, to the Syrian border. Retaking the city is a vital part of a broader operation. Iraqi forces are moving south, while in Syria, Arab and Kurdish militias will push eastwards. The IS group should then find itself surrounded in the Euphrates River Valley. Military leaders believe the battle for the city should be over in a matter of weeks.
Southern China has been ravaged by Typhoon Hato this Wednesday, with at least 10 people left dead. The storm raised Hong Kong's most severe Typhoon 10 warning, brought destruction to the gambling hub of Macau, and swept across southern China. Tens of thousands of people have been evacuated and at least 2 million are without power, Rodaba Abbas reports.
Meteorologists in Hong Kong had warned that Typhoon Hato would be aggressive. And as it made landfall, it became clear that it wasn't going to go away quietly. The Category 10 storm was the worst to hit the city in 5 years. It forced the cancellation of hundreds of flights. Schools and most businesses were forced to close, and market trading in the Asian financial hub was also suspended. As Hato bore down, hurricane-force winds and torrential downpours damaged the city's infrastructure. Some areas were inundated with knee-deep flooding. Gusts in some residential areas sent tarpaulin and roof screens among the trail of debris strewn on the streets. Trees were uprooted, with some branches flying through the air. Emergency teams rushed to rescue some people from their homes. According to government officials, dozens were taken to hospital to receive medical treatment related to the typhoon. The heavy winds and rain battered the city, bringing it to a standstill, with its usually busy streets appearing eerily empty.
A betrayal of the bloc's fundamental principles. That's how French President Emmanuel Macron described EU labour rules over posted workers this Wednesday. This as he met with Austrian Chancellor Christian Kern during a 3-day Central and European trip. Macron's campaigning to change rules, allowing companies to send workers to other EU countries without paying local social contributions. Ellen Gainsford has more.
Pushing for EU reform, Emmanuel Macron is drumming up support, campaigning to change regulations on so-called posted workers. As it stands, companies are allowed to send workers to other EU member states without paying local social charges. For Macron, the current rules mean workers in prosperous countries are being undercut by cheaper labour.
A Europe that protects is a Europe that regulates the problem of posted workers. The current rules are a betrayal of the European spirit. The domestic market and the freedom of movement were not created to help those countries that have the lowest social standards.
Macron wants a job duration for posted workers to be limited to 12 months, half the current allowance, and to crack down on fraud, introducing tougher sanctions for those who abuse the system. It's part of the French president's broader push to create a new protective Europe that helps shield citizens from the effects of cutthroat international competition. Vienna and Berlin are both behind the reforms.
Europe has to proceed together and unitarily. Later, we'll both meet our colleagues from the Czech Republic and Slovakia. This is also a sign that we don't want that Europe gets split up into an old and a new one, but that there is one Europe and there is a need here to proceed together.
Hungary, Poland, Slovakia and the Czech Republic still need convincing. They've said the changes go too far. Macron hopes to seal a reform deal at a summit on the EU directive in Brussels later this October.
And finally, Brexit's bringing a boom in tourism across the UK's shores as crowds of holidaymakers make a bid to visit the country before it exits the EU. The decline in value of the pound is another factor, as tourists can afford to treat themselves that little bit more. Flora Mori takes a look.
The sky is not always blue, but these days the beaches of Brighton are always packed with people. The popular seaside spot attracts visitors from around the world. These two women from Normandy are just getting off a ferry for a weekend getaway.
We thought that it would be a good idea to come here after Brexit happened. We only have 2 years left for entering the country without any difficulties. After Brexit, it'll be a lot harder to come for a spontaneous trip with only our ID cards.
Tasting local food and a tour of the city is on the top of their bucket list. But most of all, they want to go shopping. Since Brexit, the English pound has been on a downward trend. Now everything is on sale all year long.
I got a really good deal. I found what I wanted, so now I'm happy.
Today, a €100 bill is worth £20 more than before Brexit. And £20 can buy 2 plates of fish and chips on a terrace.
Probably say there's been about a 30 to 40% increase in the amount of people coming down here onto the seafront since last year. Definitely noticed in the commerce.
The tourism boom does not only concern Brighton, but all of the UK. About 11 million people have visited the country in the past couple months.
And that's all we have time for this edition. Stay tuned for more news coming up here on France 24.